Hi, folks. It's about 10 minutes before 9 o'clock. 10 minutes before 9 Eastern. It's about 10 minutes before 8 Central on this Wednesday, December 12th, 2012. I'm Stephen Boyle. Well, this is update number 2 on the winter storms that will be, and notice how I said storms, coming in next week. I see at the very least 2 winter storms affecting the Northeast next week with some potentially major amounts of snow. So let's start off with what's going on across the country right now. First of all, there's very cold weather along the Gulf Coast right now. Hard freeze watches and freeze warnings here, or hard freeze warnings and freeze warnings going on across these regions. There is some winter storm watches and warnings and winter weather advisories going on out into portions of the west because of a low that's being ejected into these regions. I would say fairly soon. And this is a very, very important feature that will be entering into the southwestern region of southwestern corner of the United States, because what happens down here will eventually affect our weather here in the Northeast. Now, I still want to point out to you folks that there is a hazardous weather outlook being posted by the Taunton Weather Office, or the KBOX Weather Office from NOAA, and this is very, very significant, especially since NOAA sees essentially the same thing that I'm seeing. An active weather pattern is expected to begin on Sunday and continue at times through the middle of the week. There's also potentials that it could actually go through the end of next week. There is also a potential for a strong coastal storm to affect the region sometime between next Monday and Wednesday, leaning more towards next Wednesday. At least some accumulating snow and or ice is likely to occur across interior southern New England over this time. In fact, significant amounts are a possibility if a strong coastal storm develops and it remains cold enough. Across the coastal plain, odds favor mainly rain, but can't rule out a bit of snow at the onset. The other concerns along the coast could be for a period of strong winds and perhaps some minor coastal flooding. And so on and so forth. Okay, let's first start off with the teleconnections. Okay, we're going to start off with the PNA, and this again, like we talked about in the past couple of videos, the PNA isn't a severe indicator of whether a severe storm will be hitting affecting us. Absolutely not. AO, that's tanking right now, and NAO is pretty much staying neutral to negative. Okay. Now, remember, the NAO is a mean. This is the NAO mean. So really, we want to focus our attention more on the, like I said last night, the west-based NAO. Not really the mean. That's not really what we want to focus on. And notice the west-based NAO, based upon the 12Z models, does tank quite a bit. However, the NAO mean is pretty much staying neutral. That's a very important fact, and I believe this will be happening throughout much of the winter. You don't want your east-based NAO to be too negative, but you don't want it too positive either. But at the same time, you really want your west-based NAO to be quite negative. You want your east-based NAO to be pretty much neutral, and your west-based NAO to be strongly negative. That sort of gives a mean somewhere around here. Really is what happens. Then we talk about our PNA again. It could be going positive. The PNA could be going neutral to positive, which would maybe favor some interest in activity. But again, the PNA is not. It really isn't a major factor. The AO is expected to tank as well. So here is, we're going to talk about the models. And I'm going to try to go quickly here because I want to sort of get to really my thoughts. This is the NAM. And what we're going to focus on for a lot of the models that we're going to be looking at here, three of the models, is the southeastern ridge. That's a major indicator of what's to potentially come. This is for Friday. Notice how the low is starting to enter into the southwestern region, and that's now starting to move northward. Okay. Now, at the meantime, here is our southeastern ridge continuing to be continue to rear its stubborn head, and it doesn't want to move anywhere. However, the NAM is a little bit better, but with this suppression as the cold front moves eastward. Notice how, though, what's very important is that there is cold air continuing to pour into New England. That is a very strong. That's very important, because with that cold air continuing to pour into New England, it doesn't allow this warm air to really override this cooler air. And I think the NAM is starting to look at the Canadian and the Euro, and is starting to say, hey, you know what? This first storm system, and this southeastern ridge, I think is going to get suppressed, and New England is going to get some snow with this first low pressure system, and that is what I'm seeing. How much? Not a lot. Okay, really, it's not going to be a major event. This first storm will not be major, will not be a crippling event. I see at most 5 inches of snow through southern New England. It will not be a major event, but nevertheless, it's snow, and it's, to the point where it could be shovelable. However, there could be also a period of mixing, particularly in the midday period in interior New England, of freezing rain and sleet. Coastal regions will actually start off as snow, transition over to a mix, and then transition over to all rain. Because, again, coastal regions are influenced by the marine layer. So, therefore, when we have a storm like this, they're not going to really be seeing as much of a colder scenario. However, by the nighttime, they could be transitioning back over to a very light mix. But overall, I see interior New England pretty much picking up the majority of the wintry precip. With this first storm, the second and the third, it will not be the same case. So here is the Canadian, and the Canadian shows something very interesting. Notice how here's our low. Pretty much all the models show that. There is no disagreement on whether this storm will be coming into the southwest or not. No, not at this particular point. Here is our low. Okay, and most of the models indicate, and actually all of the models indicate that this low will be ejected into the Great Lakes region. That is a certain. However, how the models handle it after it's in the Great Lakes, it's kind of taken differently. Now, the NAM is starting to hint at it, but especially the Canadian and the Euro show a little bit more of an interesting situation happening with what happens afterwards. Now, you can see seriously the colder air really coming down in through practically a majority of the Northeast. At this particular time, the southeastern ridge continues to it's still in there, but it's definitely not strong. It's definitely not that strong. Notice how this ridge is really getting suppressed now, and it is really getting overridden by this cooler air and this trough. Again, the Canadian, it's showing a fairly interesting solution. What it still is showing is a low pressure system forming somewhere around North Carolina, eventually getting ejected into the southern New Jersey region and affecting a major snowstorm affecting the Northeast and New England. Could this solution pan out? It's possible. All right, and I think at this particular point, it's not a question of whether or not southern New England will get snow. I don't really think that that's the question right now. It's when is the heaviest of the snow going to come? Is it going to come on Monday or Tuesday, or is it going to come in on Wednesday? Right now, I am leaning more towards a Euro solution with the heaviest of the snowfall happening sometime Wednesday night into Thursday. And you'll see what I'm talking about in just a minute. But here is that low pressure that is continuing to move northward. Now, the Canadian shows yet another area of low pressure out here into the south central plains. I don't know what will happen with this, and if these will sort of kind of come in here with the kind of produce a fairly interesting situation with these lows in here, and kind of grab up some southern stream moisture, and then eventually create a very interesting snow event. I'm not sure, but at this particular time, the Canadian is definitely closer to what the Euro is trying to suggest. Now here is the GFS. Now the GFS is totally off. Okay, I can tell you that's one thing's for sure. All right, notice how, see how you have this big, these lines in here. They're sort of flowing in this direction right here. That is the southeastern ridge. All right. Now you don't see an H here, but there is. Okay, I'm making an H. This is the southeastern ridge. Okay. The GFS is really overdoing it. The GFS is not taking this pattern change very, very well. And essentially what happens is that there's another area of high pressure that sort of gets ejected yet again into the southeast. You have this area of high pressure here, and notice how all of this eventually creates a storm to move more inland. I do not, absolutely do not agree that this storm will be moving that far inland with that negative of a west-based NAO, first of all. Secondly, with the general pattern, all right. I do believe that southeastern ridge will be leaving us. I really strongly do believe that this southeastern ridge is just going off and doing its own thing. It's not going to be affecting the United States anymore. That's just from what I've been looking at here. Now, so this is there is that low pressure system. All right. Now, again, it shows a strong low pressure. However, it's too far inland. Okay. Now, by the time it gets rid of that, it suppresses that southeastern ridge. It's already the 22nd, which I can't agree. But we'll see what happens. I mean, could the GFS be right? Yes, but something that the GFS is trying to show here is a major storm system around the 27th or the 28th, and that's just way too far out right now. But we'll see what happens. All right, we're gonna start off with the Euro. Or here's the Euro now. Now you're looking at this and you're looking at it and saying, Steven, what the heck? What's up with these colors? These very bright red colors. And by the way, this is from Weatherbell, from the Weatherbell website. When you're looking at this and you're seeing these bright colors, it's essentially showing how strong the high pressure is. The darker the color, the darker the color, the stronger either the low pressure or the ridge is, or high pressure. All right. Now, basically, what we see here is this very strong high pressure system in the northeast here. But again, and here's that southeastern ridge kind of trying to come back into play here around by Friday. So wouldn't be surprised if maybe we saw some temperatures into some localized regions being a little bit more warmer being a little bit more warmer, but that would be by Friday. That high quickly gets pushed away, and it starts getting suppressed by the Euro by about hour 72. Now there's hour 96, and there's our main southeastern ridge, and that's really now starting to move to the east. At the same time, we have this area of low pressure in here. All right, this area of low pressure is starting to eject some precipitation into the northeast, because this is essentially a cold front right here. However, the colder air is going to essentially be locked into place in New England, because notice how we have a high pressure right in here. That's bringing cooler air down into New England. So therefore, when we have this low pressure system, there will be some snowfall amounts through portions of New England. Now remember, your marine layer on the coast will be definitely affecting those people. So therefore, they'll get lesser amounts of snow. Now, there's this secondary that sort of forms off of the first system, and that could give another burst of snow for around. This is hour 120, so yeah, another burst of snow around the 18th. But then our main feature forms back here into Oklahoma. And this sort of forms and then comes up the coast, and not in that direction. It's going to sort of move up like this, right across the 4070 benchmark. And if you've watched my videos here on YouTube, especially my final winter forecast or my winter forecast before it, I talked about a anomaly that is located right in here. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the storm as it's going over the coast of North Carolina. All right. Now, not only that, but remember I mentioned how this year we would be seeing a lot of 4070 benchmark storms. This is essentially taking a track that I really was highlighting as one of the main tracks this year. All right. And the Euro, out of all of the models, is indicating this. And the Euro is a very, very, very reliable model. So here's our storm. Okay, it gathers up Gulf of Mexico moisture. All right, and it's starting to form. All right. Now, it's also starting to phase a little bit with this northern stream as well. All right. Now, we move to hour 168, and just look at how it blows right up. Right over North Carolina. Now, some people may be thinking that, oh, this must be a model error. Look at how intense this storm is. That must be wrong. Well, no. If you know about that sea surface anomaly, if you don't know about it, then guess what? You're gonna be really like, why is this storm exploding so much? Is there something there? It's that sea surface anomaly that's making the storm drop. I mean, looking at that's at hour 168. Looking at hour 144, it's 1,002 millibars. Going to hour 168, excuse me, it goes to 981 millibars. Okay, it drops like a rock, and that is because, first of all, it's phasing with that northern stream, so it's getting some energy from that northern stream. But not only that, it's also got energy from the Gulf, but not only that, it gets more additional energy off of that sea surface anomaly. So it's got three areas of energy that it's getting, and it's really it has a bunch of moisture with it. A bunch of moisture. Now, what's the direction of the storm? Now, as I showed you in my other videos, it'll generally be a 4070 benchmark storm. So watch where it goes. This is hour 168, 192. And mind you, it doesn't stop strengthening after that anomaly. Once it's got that energy in it, it continues to deepen and continues. Okay? Notice how this is now a 971 millibar low. That is absolutely a phenomenal nor'easter. I'm telling you, folks, if the euro is correct on this, and let me actually continue to move on here. First of all, this is our 192, 216. Notice how it now ejects itself into the Gulf of Maine. But watch what happens at hour 240. Look at where it is. It was up here, and now it's down here. What is happening with this low? It's starting to stall. Why is it stalling? Because it has so much energy, and it takes so much to push that storm out and continue it going on its normal track, that it's just meandering around. And if you recall my one of my videos, I talked about this in very intense detail, that we would be getting I strongly believe that there would be several blizzards this year, that we would see this pressure dropping, the lower level pressure would drop, and the lower level pressure would drop. Remember, I used the analogy of the soda can and cutting the bottom of the soda can. You just get a bunch of water just coming down from it. Now, I want to show you something on the snow or on the precipitation models. Okay, but this paints a very intense picture for a lot of people. Just to give you an idea, this would be absolutely devastating. Absolutely devastating for people in New Jersey. Not good at all. And for people who lives in coastal New England, talk about erosion. It would be terrible for erosion as well. I mean, this would be a serious event. Okay. Now, also, you're looking at the isobars and how close they are together. Notice how close they are together. Winds would be phenomenal. They would not, and this storm's winds would be going actually all the way out to Minnesota. All right. This would be this storm's winds would be going out pretty far. Okay. What we would be seeing for winds here close to the low pressure center, right on the coast, could see up to possibly, and again, this will change as time moves onward, or it could change, up to 80 mile an hour wind gusts and 60 to 70 a little bit farther inland. Okay, if that's the case and you're having major snow falling, that's a massive blizzard. I mean, talk about blowing and drifting, and it would just be really, to be very bluntly honest, it would be record-breaking. It would be a record-breaking blizzard if the euro is correct. And I take the euro very seriously, extremely seriously. I don't take it with a grain of salt. I take the GFS with a grain of salt. Although I look at it, I just think the euro has a better grasp on this situation. It's got this pattern pretty much down pat. It's got the storms down pat, and it's got the overall scheme of things together. Okay, now looking at the actual QPF. Now we're looking at the QPF of everything. So now you're going to get a sort of a water. You're going to see the water and how much water these things can produce. So here's our first storm, the one that's getting ejected from the southwest. Okay. Now this one in the northeast, or particularly New England, produces very little amounts of QPF. Again, at most, I see 5 inches with this first little wave that comes through Sunday into Monday. Okay, I mean, it's still something, and it still could cause some problems, but it wouldn't be severe. Absolutely not. Now, around hour 120, okay, and we'll move back. We're now looking at another burst of QPF coming in here. This is actually not our main storm, remember? Absolutely not. Okay, this is from a secondary low that is forming off of the primary. All right, so here is our first low, our core low, and then here is our secondary. This produces a fairly interesting snowstorm for around, let's see here. So hour 120, we'll move to hour 126, hour 132. It produces a very intense snowstorm around the 18th. Not a major blizzard, but a snowstorm, a moderate snowstorm for some of the Northeast. All right, so that ends, and that's by Tuesday. Okay, and that ends on Tuesday. Now we're talking about the real deal here. The real deal starts coming in around really 144. Now at this particular time, it's down here. The QPF with our this storm here is still in New England affecting us. The center is right here, but there's still more precipitation that's coming off from it. Here is our storm that let me tell you, you're gonna some people will be jumping up and down for joy. Some people will be screaming at their computer screens, depending upon your view of winter weather. Just looking at this storm, look at how much rain Florida gets. First of all, that's around hour 156. Moving on here, just look at this QPF. I mean, look at it. I mean, snow would be falling pretty much for all these guys through here. Some areas in a 6-hour period picking up, we'll say 6 inches of snow. Some areas. Now it's not until, remember, the low pressure center is right in here. So it's not until it gets north of here that you're really going to start seeing the real good effects from it. So that's hour 168. 172. All right, just look at how it blows right up. I mean, some areas, whether this is rain or snow, it really doesn't matter. In a 6-hour period, you're looking at about 1.7 inches of rain, or if it's snow, oh boy, that's about 17 inches of snow in a 6-hour period. But overall, okay, this is hour 174. Moving on to hour 180, and I really want you to look here very closely. What do you see here? Well, what I see is an eye. We got an eye. We got a very classic comma-shaped low. When you see something like this, people who are winter lovers are going to be jumping up and down for joy. People who are snow haters are should be screaming at their computers right now, because with this being shown, practically anywhere from, I would say, northern New Jersey through southern New Hampshire, we're looking at, in a 6-hour period, widespread, about 8 to locally 15 inches of snow. And that's quite a bit of snow in a 6-hour period. Now that's hour 180. 186, the storm is starting to wrap itself up, but it's still snowing pretty good. And we still got a good, well-defined, almost eye, I guess you can say, according to the Euro. 192, we still see some very interesting weather going on. 198, this storm is starting to finally wrap itself up. 204, you're looking at the QPF now, and it's barely anything. But just notice how some of this heavier QPF, again, moves southward, and that's because the storm is stalled. So what happens here is really going to be, it's going to be an interesting storm, never to say the least here. Could the Euro be wrong? Yes. But this is a situation like Sandy. This is a very Sandy-like situation. And the Euro was indicating Sandy quite about this far out, actually even further out. And right now, the Euro is showing a very powerful, very intense situation. So, what would I say based upon each of these three storms? New England about 3 to 5 inches with the first storm. Okay, so notice I'm going to move quickly here. That's about adding up all of this 3 to 5 inches. Second storm system, second wave of energy. That's the secondary low from the primary low system. You're looking at about really most of the energy would be most of the snowfall. Some heavier snowfall actually back out in parts of Ohio, but even with this big broad region of precipitation, there could actually be some very intense amounts of snow with it. So I would say anywhere between 5 to 10 inches of snow with this particular situation. I did some math earlier on today. I kind of looked at the exact amounts and sort of did some conversions to snowfall amounts, and I got about 5 to 10 inches of snow, 3 to 5 with the first situation. All right, so now we're moving out, and now we're moving to our main event. If you add up everything together with the last and final storm, 17 to about 33 inches of snow, with locally higher amounts being reported. Could this become even more intense than what it's being shown here? I hate to say it, but I think there's a possibility that it could even be more intense than what's being shown right now, and it's very hard to believe. But I seriously think this storm system will be very severe, massive blizzard for most of the East Coast, and it's going to be very intense. So, I imagine there was a lot of repeating of certain words through this, but I'm trying to really paint the picture. When the Euro shows something this significant, usually it's not a model error. I highly doubt it's a model error, since it was also showing it yesterday and the day before. So, and also, I was in the room with the NOAA meteorologist last week, and he was actually seeing this particular situation setting up. A very potent situation like this setting up. But again, it was still too far out to, determine whether or not this would happen. So, folks, we will have to see what happens, but I strongly do believe that this storm will be record-breaking, potentially. So that's it for right now. As we get closer to the end of the week, I'll start creating maps for this, and things like this. So I hope you all stay tuned, and update number 3 I should be posting up here tomorrow. We'll analyze the new model runs and, sort of take it from there. So I hope you all have a great rest of your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.